Election day is looming fast. Our democracy is in jeopardy from so many who, even before the election, say they won't accept the results unless they win. I don't know about you, but I need a break from it all. Let's set aside the political rhetoric and look instead at a children's book by Anthony DeStefano about the Virgin Mary. What magical powers does DeStefano attribute to Mary? Let's have a chat. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, and especially to my patrons and channel members. DeStefano is most known for his book, A Travel Guide to Heaven, a book about heaven for adults, but more of his work is directed at children. So let's take a look at one of his children's picture books.
Pictures help remind us of the people that we love, people here on earth with us and heaven up above. Throughout the years, Our Lady has been shown in many ways, in paintings, statues, books, and cards, and holiday displays.
I thought this book was a good nod to All Saints' Day that was on Tuesday, and what better way to celebrate than to examine silly beliefs about saints? The Catholic Church, as well as some others, still revere relics and saints. When I was in Italy, we were told of relics found in some of the churches that we visited. Even as a believer, I found the idea of the toe of a dead saint having healing powers as silly. But when your faith includes lots of magical happenings, it's no stretch to add a few more. When I took a trip to Russia in 2005, one thing that struck me was all the icons. Icons are a big part of the Orthodox Church. But as a Protestant believer, icons look to me no different than idols. People pray to these icons. One guide explained to us that every church has a screen with 4 icons at the front. One is always Jesus and one is always Mary. The other 2 vary. One is usually the patron saint of that church. The Orthodox say that they do not worship these icons. They are not idols. Rather, they are used to assist them in worship. They kiss the icons and pray to them, but they say this is not worship. It also struck me as very like the Catholic Church in art form and in holding Mary in prominence. The role of Mary is one of the biggest points of contention between Catholics and Protestants. Today we'll hear about what DeStefano, a Catholic author, thinks about Mary through this picture book.
These images can help us pray and make us faithful too. From Our Lady's picture book, here are just a few.
Is this a photo album? The woman holding the book is also Mary in the book. I guess we're looking at Mary's photo album with her. I'm also noticing how white Mary and Jesus are. Another pair of blue-eyed, Norse-looking Hebrews.
When Jesus was a tiny tot, Our Lady got him dressed. She took him to the temple so the baby could be blessed. Then Mary turned and saw a man, faithful, wise, and old. He told her she would suffer, and the sword would pierce her soul. And sure enough, the man was right, and what he said came true. Mary's life was very hard and full of sorrows, too.
I'll grant you that from the story, Mary faced the loss of Jesus. But what other sorrows is she supposed to have faced? There aren't any recorded in the Bible. I looked it up, and here's what I found. Traditionally, the 7 sorrows are the prophecy of Simon in Luke 2, the flight into Egypt in Matthew 2, the loss of the child Jesus in the temple in Jerusalem, also in Luke 2, Mary's meeting Jesus on the Via Dolorosa, the 4th station of the cross, not found in the Bible, the crucifixion of Jesus on Mount Calvary, Jesus is taken down from the cross, the burial of Jesus by Joseph of Arimathea. 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all about Jesus' death and the events surrounding that. The flight to Egypt is about escaping Herod, someone who was actually dead before Jesus was born, if you go by the Luke story. and an event that makes no sense if you accept that Mary and Joseph lived in Nazareth before Jesus was born, as the Gospel of Luke claims. I mean, if they in fact lived in Nazareth and Herod was alive, since Judah wasn't part of his jurisdiction, fleeing to Nazareth, their home, makes far more sense than fleeing to Egypt. But the Matthew author explains the real reason that they fled to Egypt. They had a prophecy to fulfill, so of course, they chose the illogical choice so that they could fulfill the prophecy. On the other hand, I guess there were worse options open to them. They could have tried to cross the ocean. Now that would have made for a cool gospel. Jesus spends his childhood in North America before returning to his ministry in Israel. Why not? It makes as much sense as anything else in the Bible. It would definitely make a better case for Jesus' divinity if he was able to move to a country that no one in his part of the world even knew existed, and to which he had no means of travel. Honestly, the gospel writers sometimes lacked imagination.
So when you're feeling sad and blue and gloomy now and then, ask Our Lady for her help to make you smile again.
Does this actually work? I mean, I know Mary is dead and has been dead for 2,000 years, so Mary doesn't actually do anything. So, really, what I'm asking is, does it work to tell children to ask an imaginary friend to cheer them up? It might. But I have a better idea. Parent, cheer the child up yourself. Ask the child what their problem is. Listen to the response. Here's the hard part. Try to see through a child's eyes why that is an issue. I was very fortunate to be able to get insight into the mind of a very young child. My son Robin could speak in full sentences before he was 2. One night he woke crying from a nightmare. I asked what happened. He said he dreamed that he spilled his milk and his juice. I wanted to burst out laughing. This is a nightmare? But to Robin, it was. To a 1-year-old, not having food because it was spilled was about the worst tragedy that he could imagine. He wasn't old enough to understand how easy it is to refill the cups, because for him, this was not easy. He could not do this. Compounding the issue was that his dad got really angry about spills. See the tragedy through his eyes. Offer him assurance that it's okay, even if you do spill your milk and your juice. Mom and Dad still love you and will make sure that you always have enough to eat. Now, isn't this a lot better than asking a dead woman to make you feel better?
When Jesus was a little boy, he had a scary dream. He saw a cross and spear and nails and woke up with a scream. His mother took him in her arms and hugged and squeezed him tight. She kissed his head and held his hands, and soon he felt all right.
I had not heard this one before. I looked it up but could find no Catholic tradition or anything in the infancy Gospel of Thomas about Jesus having such a dream. It definitely would be quite a nightmare, especially for a young child. I'm also wondering why the angel has a cross. Is that the angel of death? Why do angels carry around torture devices in a children's book? That's just creepy. As to the advice, again, the parents should be reassuring the frightened child, not pawning off the responsibility on ghosts. Maybe that's one of the reasons that religion started. Parents didn't want to do their job, so they made up imaginary friends for their kids to turn to.
So when you're scared and filled with fear and don't know what to do, ask Our Lady for her help, and she will comfort you. When Mary lived in Nazareth, her house was made of stone. Our Lady stayed there many years until her son was grown. This house in which the family lived together happily was flown by angels in the sky and brought to Italy.
This is a Catholic tradition. According to the Church of Our Lady of Loretto in Foxville, Colorado, the tradition of the Shrine of Loretto goes back to the year 1291. As the last of the Crusaders returned to Western Europe, they brought with them a number of relics, objects of devotion and remembrances of holy shrines. The dwelling of Mary, the house which church tradition maintained was the site of the appearance of the Archangel Gabriel, and therefore the incarnation of our Savior, was moved from Nazareth to Europe. The house arrived at Loreto on December 10th, 1294. Or, according to the Catholic Travel Guide, there are two versions of the story. In the traditional story, we are told that the angels transported the home from Nazareth to Dalmatia, modern-day Croatia, in 1291, and the Blessed Virgin Mary actually appeared there and many miracles were reported. The house was again transported to a hilltop in the town of Loreto, Italy, in December of 1294. Another version of the story tells of a wealthy family in the Holy Land, the Angeli family, who paid to have the house dismantled and reassembled in Italy. The name Angeli is translated angel in both Latin and Italian. Either way, the Protestants miss out on the Catholic magic. The Catholics have relics with magical properties, houses that get moved by angels, and even bread that literally turns into flesh every week. But of course, only in essence, not in reality. However, the Catholic magic spells backfire when priests don't get the spell just right. Like the recent scandal when it was discovered that an Arizona priest had been baptizing for decades, saying, "We baptize you," instead of "I baptize you." The church said he got the spell wrong, so all the people he baptized weren't really baptized. Any that died were now in hell. Anyone that was subsequently married, their marriages were no longer recognized by the church as they were married to a person who was not baptized into the church. They need some sort of sign that the spell worked, maybe a halo appearing over the head of everyone that the spell worked for. That would do it. Or better yet, how about recognizing that the exact words don't really matter because it isn't really a magic spell, and when it's done, nothing really happens.
So when your family needs some prayers and isn't doing well, ask Our Lady for her help to bless the place you dwell. When Mary's mission was complete and all her work was done, her soul and body God took up to be beside her Son. From heaven she can help us more with constant loving prayer, sending graces down to us and people everywhere.
Okay, I'm going to ask the same question about Mary that I ask often about Jesus. If Mary physically ascended into heaven, how did she get there? Did she have a spaceship? Since she didn't die first, according to Catholic tradition, her physical body traveled through space to get to heaven. Catholics contend that heaven is a physical place with physical bodies. I'm wondering how far away is it? Could we see it with the JWST? If we had warp technology, could people just travel there? Also, why did Mary and Jesus take their bodies to heaven, but most people leave theirs behind? The Catholic Church says that when you get to heaven, you get a new body, a perfect body. Many Protestants say that too. So what's with all the rules for burial of physical bodies if you don't even need them anymore after you are dead? The Catholic Church has softened some of the rules. For example, the Church used to refuse to bury anyone that committed suicide in their cemeteries, in consecrated ground, because they believed that suicide was a mortal sin. They no longer have this policy, as they now realize that the motivation behind suicide is not sin, but mental illness. According to Trent Horn, this was discarded as of the Code of 1983. But if you get a new body in heaven, what difference does it make what happens to the earthly shell that is now discarded? Both Catholics and Protestants believe that there will be a resurrection at the end of time. Believers will be reunited with their bodies at that time. But if the dead already have a perfect body, why would they want to return to their old earthly body? Believers say that the earthly body becomes a perfect body at this time, but now you have two perfect bodies. Why? Do you share the spare? Does one die now? Do you change bodies whenever the mood strikes you, sort of like changing clothing? Some say the dead don't rise until the end of time, that the dead are just dead until the final resurrection. But this makes Jesus' statement to the thief on the cross, "Today you will be with me in paradise," a lie. And this is why I don't believe any of it. No matter which version of the theology you go to, at some point you end up with a contradiction or illogic.
So when your body's feeling weak and sluggish, sick and sore, ask Our Lady for her help to make you strong and pure.
No, kids, tell your parents. If you are sick, you need a doctor. I won't say don't pray. If you want to pray, go right ahead. But don't let that be the only thing you do. You still need medical help when you are sick.
When ships at sea are caught in storms and black clouds fill the night, Our Lady leads them to the shore, just like a guiding light.
Between 2011 and 2020, some 876 vessels were lost at sea. Either we have a lot of heathen sea captains that aren't praying to Mary, or Mary isn't doing a very good job at guiding the ships. Maybe Mary is busy elsewhere and can't save everyone. Or, more likely, Mary is dead and can't save anyone.
She's often called the Northern Star because she points the way to safety in the arms of Jesus when we go astray.
Mary is the North Star? Well, in that case, she can guide the sea captains. But explain this. The North Star was in the sky before Mary was born. It was also in the sky while Mary was alive. How was she in both places at once? He really means this is a metaphor, but how does Mary point the way to Jesus? When did Mary ever say anything about following Jesus or listening to Jesus? The closest that you get in the Bible is her telling a waiter at the wedding at Cana to do whatever Jesus said. I guess you could count that.
So when you're lost and in distress and feeling all alone, ask Our Lady for her help and she will lead you home.
Better to ask a police officer. A police officer really will take a lost child home. Asking Mary is just more wishful thinking. I'm sure someone will have a story about being lost, praying, and finding their way. The question is, did Mary really do anything, or did the prayer help the person focus and remember? Or maybe they just got lucky. I find these possibilities far more likely than any actual help from Mary. Mainly because when I Google it, I didn't find thousands of success stories about this kind of scenario that one would expect to find if Mary really was out there helping lost kids find their way home. Instead, a couple of Google searches reworded on this topic yielded lots of suggestions for prayers to find lost children. Prayers that continually go unanswered, as, according to the FBI, there were 337,195 missing children in 2021 and 365,348 in 2020. Nearly 100,000 children being reported missing daily. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children claims a nearly 90% resolution rate. This is impressive. Unfortunately, the site doesn't say what the resolution is. Were all these children found alive and well? They also say that 93% of their resolutions were to locations outside the U.S., and the children were being trafficked. They most definitely were not well. If Mary is overseeing their well-being, she is not doing a very good job, especially since she's supposed to be the patron saint of all humans, and especially young children.
When Christian people on the earth throughout their history were persecuted for their faith, they prayed the rosary.
This assumes that all Christians are Catholics. Since Catholics say that they are the one true church, I guess this one is more of a dig at your fellow believers that don't believe exactly like you. They aren't real Christians. Guess DeStefano wants to instill in the young the idea that they are the only Christians. Get those tribalistic ideas in their heads early. Protestants don't pray the rosary. A little over half of Catholics say that they do pray the rosary. 8% do so weekly and 4% do so daily, with most saying they do it at least once a year. It is a complicated prayer. You have the beads to help you keep track of where you are. There are places where there are gaps in the beads to help you keep track of which section of the prayer is next. Hail Mary is the most common phrase in the prayer. The church recommends introducing this prayer to your child at age 10. My parents left the church when I was 7, so I never prayed this. But I also never saw my mother praying this, nor my dad. I did see my grandfather doing this. He was a devout Catholic. And I've seen several relatives who are Catholic who wear or carry rosary beads. I wonder if rosary beads are kind of like the Mennonite prayer caps. Mennonite women always wear a head covering of some kind. It varies greatly between different sects, because they believe that a woman needs her head covered to pray. And since one never knows when one might need to pray, they always wear a head covering. I wonder if Catholics carry rosary beads just in case they feel a need to pray.
And when these Christians had to fight in battles on the sea, Our Lady helped them with her prayers and gave them victory.
I wasn't aware of any Catholic naval battles, so I had to look this one up. The picture here is close to the one on this website. This battle is also the only one that came up when I Googled Catholic naval battle. So here's the event that the book is talking about. On October 7th, 1571, 2 years after the Vatican urged the rosary for universal use, an event took place that caused the devotion to gain widespread popularity. One of the most famous and bloodiest naval battles in history, the opposing forces were Christians made up of an alliance of fleets from Spain and Italy against a far superior Turkish navy. The Muslim force was threatening to take over the Mediterranean Sea and hence be in position to attack European countries. Pope Pius V asked the Christian faithful to pray the rosary and seek the intercession of the Blessed Mother to defeat the Muslim navy. Despite being outnumbered, the Christian fleet prevailed. Accordingly, Pope Pius established October 7th as a feast day of Our Lady of Victory, thus perpetually bringing honor to the Blessed Mother for her assistance. In 1573, Pope Gregory XIII changed the name of the feast to Our Lady of the Rosary, a feast the Church continues to celebrate. Let's compare that to a historical account of the battle. The Battle of Lepanto is the motherlode of historical turning points. It broke the Ottoman Empire's dominion of the eastern Mediterranean and marked a turning point in the tide of the long-simmering conflict between the European powers, particularly the Habsburgs and the Ottomans. It gave European Christians the confidence that they could stand up to the feared Ottomans and actually come away with a major victory. Well, kind of. I mean, it did those things, more or less, but not subtly and not even very apparently in the years immediately following the battle. Lepanto had far-reaching impacts, but most of them took a while to really shake out, and one of its greatest impacts actually had less to do with the European-Ottoman conflict than the way naval warfare would be conducted in the future. Though it may not have been apparent at the time, in hindsight, we can say that the Ottoman fleet that met the Christians at Lepanto was overmatched. The Christians had fewer ships and fewer men, but they had around 2.5 times the number of cannons in their fleet, over 1,800, compared to the Ottomans' 700, and the soldiers on board the Christian ships were carrying firearms, while the Ottomans were still reliant on what was traditionally their most devastating naval weapon, archers. What I didn't find in any of the sites that I looked at was an indication of persecution of Catholics under Ottoman rule. Under the Ottomans, most of their subjects were not Muslim. The majority were Orthodox Christian. The conflict with the Catholics was political, not religious. The Protestant Reformation was also going on at this time, and the Ottomans took advantage of it to curry alliances with Protestants against the Catholic-controlled regions. But again, not for religious, but political reasons. But of course, that doesn't make for a very good children's story, now does it?
So when you're feeling overwhelmed and trying not to sin, ask Our Lady for her help to struggle till you win.
That's about right for the religious. You try, you encounter difficulty, you pray, then you try again. The only difference in my method is cut out the prayer part. It's a waste of time. It's possible that a time of meditation will focus your thoughts and efforts and can aid in success. And prayer can do this, but not because there's some Skylady helping you. It works the same way to meditate on anything.
When children misbehave by being bad and telling lies, God forgives them always if they just apologize.
Why the focus on lying? As I mentioned in my last video on Ray Comfort, there is likely a focus on this sin because it is a part of human nature. All people lie. If lying is sin, and God gave humans their nature, then God designed people to be sinners. A God that designs you in a way that will be displeasing to Him so that He can punish you is not a good God. A God that punishes you for being what He made you to be is a malicious God. Also, this confessional is backwards. In reality, both parties are hidden and have privacy. But with all the issues the Catholic Church has with pedophile priests, it shouldn't be. It should be out in the open. But the child should have privacy. So if the child really does want to confess something, particularly if the child is reporting that he is being abused, the child should be afforded privacy. The priest should not. The priest should be in full view to any passerby so his conduct is fully accountable to any present. This is my suggestion to redo confessionals.
The Lord is kind and merciful to children big and small. He helps them get back up again the moment that they fall.
Unless the priest makes a mistake with the baptism incantation, because if he says, "We baptize you," instead of "I baptize you," then your baptism didn't take, and if you die, you go straight to hell, because the spell didn't work, and unbaptized children go straight to hell, because God loves you so much.
So when you've sinned by doing something God does not allow, ask Our Lady for her help to say you're sorry now. When all the world is plagued by wars and hatred fills the air, Mary prays to God for peace and friendship everywhere.
Well, I would say that God is definitely not listening. If God doesn't listen to his own mother, isn't that breaking the fifth commandment? Your God is sinning. Maybe your God needs to pray too.
The only way the gift of peace can ever be restored is if we worship Mary's Son, Jesus Christ the Lord. So when you're feeling really mad at people that you know, ask Our Lady for her help to let your anger go. Our Lady's heart belongs to God. It's spotless, clean, and pure. That's why it's called immaculate for now and evermore. Her heart in heaven beats with love for boys and girls like you. She's mother to our Lord above, but she's your mother too. So ask Our Lady for her help. Ask her day and night. Ask her when you're feeling sad. Ask with all your might.
Here's the setup for the catch-all excuse for why your prayer wasn't answered. If God didn't answer, you didn't pray hard enough. But really, how does one do this? Shout louder? Pray over and over again? The Bible actually says not to do this. Be more sincere? How does one force oneself to be more sincere? The real answer is God doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't matter how you pray.
Ask Our Lady, never fear. Ask for anything. She will bring you peace and joy from Jesus Christ the King.
All in all, about what one would expect from a children's book. A slanted view of history, false claims of persecution, putting the burden of bringing peace to the world on the shoulders of praying children. But hey, don't worry. An invisible lady will help you and be with you, even if you never see her, nor see anything happen that can realistically be attributed to her doing. The one good point, at least it isn't misogynistic like the Protestant fundies. Their book would say Mom is a sinner if she doesn't stay home and take care of Dad and the kids. I hope you enjoyed our little trip into Fantasyland as a break from the political turmoil of our real world. Live your life.